Welcome to episode 25 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby, and this is a quick reminder that my play, The Commandment, will premiere this July at the Hamilton Fringe Festival in Hamilton, Ontario. If you're in the area, I hope you'll come by and see my show or any of the great shows at the Fringe. You can buy tickets at hamiltonfringe.ca, and you can find out more about my play at thecommandment.ca. On Stageworthy, I interview people who make theater. Actors, directors, playwrights, and more, and talk to them about everything from why they chose the theater to their work process and anything in between. My guests on this episode are Aisha Mansour-Gonsalves, Greta Papagiorgio, and Brittany Phillip Gibson from the Full Circle Theatre Scenes from the Plays I Never Wrote, which is part of the 2016 Toronto Fringe Festival. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Once again, let's have everybody's name so that everybody can hear everybody's voices. Let's start here.
Hi, I'm Greta Papagiorgio. I'm directing this show.
I am Aisha Mansour-Gonsalves, and I am acting in the show.
And I am Brittany Phillip Gibson, and I am acting in the show and producing it.
Awesome. Speaking of the show,
Yeah.
let's talk about what the show is. Who wants to
It says goodbye to all that. Goodbye to all that. And I actually wrote it as well, along with directing it. So,
No,
you
it's
know.
not.
Oh my God, no. It seems from, oh my God. I'm directing 2 shows,
Okay.
and right now I'm
Hence why she's very confused right
I'm barely keeping it together at this point.
She's doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. You. Oh my gosh. That's really embarrassing.
So this show that we're talking about is called...
Scenes from Plays I Never Wrote,
Okay.
which I actually wrote, not the other one. The other one is called Goodbye to All That. And my partner wrote that one.
Can you tell me about what the show is about?
This show? Yes.
This show.
This show, yeah.
The show that you have your cast
Yeah.
I said I only know about one.
One show,
So
yeah.
let's
Okay.
talk about the show
Yeah, it's
that
fine. It's
everybody
called,
knows
yes.
about. Maybe we'll talk about the other show a little further in.
Yes. It's called, Scenes from Plays That I Never Wrote. And it's about a writer who confronts her creative unconscious. Mm-hmm. And she wakes up in a Bardo state and discovers that she needs to finish a play because she has been writing her whole life and never completed a play. And that's what the play is about.
Okay. Interesting. And who do your actors play?
Well, Brittany plays Katherine, the writer, and Aisha plays Juice, the creative unconscious.
The so-called creative unconscious.
Yes. I don't know. Do I give away the ending?
No.
Okay, yeah.
Let's not give away the ending.
Yeah.
Let's give us a
Please,
setup,
because
but not the ending.
come to the show because it's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. Actually, I'm super thrilled about this script because it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I have great roles for women. I think my litmus test is this a role that I would want to play? Because I started out as an actor, and every one of these roles is one that I want to play. So I'm like, I think this is going to be fun.
Yes.
As a writer, writing a play about a playwright who's has never finished a play. Was there any stuff in there?
Absolutely. Actually, a number of these scenes are actually from plays that I started and never completed.
Hence the title.
I should say, producer Brittany should should say that, like, as part of Greta's creative process, I feel like we had the title long before we had much out.
Yeah.
As an idea, as sort of a jumping off point.
Yeah.
When we got into the Fringe in the first place, was sort of like, okay, so we won the lottery. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
Did you have a show what did you have when you entered the lottery?
A beer.
Yeah, no, we had a beer. Actually, I wasn't even in town.
Everybody has a beer when they enter the lottery. But when you put in the lottery,
this had been an idea in my head that I should just use all the scenes from the plays that I never wrote, but I hadn't written it yet, and so that happened fairly quickly, I think.
Yeah.
Did you enter with that title?
We entered with nothing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we had a conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
We hadn't had this conversation until, like, maybe just before the lottery happened, but at that point we were already in it.
Yeah.
All right.
So
that was exciting.
Yeah. No, it is exciting. I mean, it's kind of, what's great about it is that it provides a deadline. And so, for better or for worse, right?
The
Writers need
The
deadlines.
deadline is a little bit kinder than it used to be, because I can remember when the Fringe Lottery was in February, which was like, all right,
that's
now
tight.
we gotta come up with a show, and that's really tight.
It is really tight.
November is a little nicer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Except that then you totally think to yourself, like,
I've got lots of time.
Of course you do, but you don't.
Yeah.
No.
you don't.
But I think that part of the part where you think you have a lot of time is part of the process of, like, it. Even though you may not get any work done in in those months that you think, oh, we've got lots of time. You need that time to think that. You know what I mean?
To think and consider.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's there. It's marinating. It's stuff's happening.
Yeah. Was everybody involved at that time that you submitted, or did you only know that producer Brittany and writer director Gerda were going to?
At the time, that was all that was on the list. But when I had to sit down and write, I'm in the very fortunate position because I'm a teacher. I teach Meisner technique, and as I started writing these things, like, actors definitely came into my head, and I feel that I started to write for them. So that was
I also, we ran into each other at a photography exhibit that I was in. Not the photographer, I was in one of the photos. And Greta and Hugh, he was there, Greta's partner, and they were telling me how they just, I think it was just like after you got in the lottery, like, oh, well, now we have to, and they were kind of like, oh boy, two shows. And I looked at them and I said, well, if you need any actors, as one does. I mean, it's not like, I know Greta well enough to say that to her, so I was like, and I was like, no pressure, if it doesn't fit, doesn't fit, but hey, I'm open if it happens to be a thing.
Yeah, and it was totally a seed that was planted. So there we go.
That worked out.
See, there it goes, actors. Just put it out there. You got to put it out there all the time. You never know.
Yeah,
and you could be in a Fringe show too.
What's funny is that it's actually very true. It's one of those things that I'm learning doing the podcast, and it's one of the things I'm learning producing my own show. Is that if you don't put it out there, it's not going to happen.
That's it.
So it's good to do.
I think it's very interesting that you're bringing that up, because that's basically what the show is about. If anybody, not just artists. I think we're specifically dealing with artists. We're kind of focusing on that, but I think that any person can relate to what the subject matter of the show, because we all know what that's like to have something that we are not finishing, or something that we want to do that we're not doing, or there's always, and there's those voices in your head telling you all kinds of things and distracting you and all this business that every person knows what that feels like. So I think that that's what's so great about this show, is that everybody's gonna relate. Like, people are gonna come to the show, and it would be, I would imagine it would be weird if someone didn't. They are lying.
And that was sort of the reason that we entered the Fringe in the first place, even before there was a show, was the idea of just doing something. That we wanted to do something, and you have to put it out there.
Absolutely. Just to take a second, can we talk a little bit about everybody's theater background? Like, why, not just like where did you go to school or if you went to school, but I'm curious about why you chose the theater, or what your earliest experiences of the theater were, that sort of thing. That's what I really want to know about.
You got a couple hours?
Yeah. We might look young, but
I know, me and Greta. You can tell by our laughs. The years. I'll start because I've got lots to say. So I actually started as a dancer and as a professional dancer first, but I always kind of dabbled in acting, but grew up on the stage very much so all my life as a dancer. I did a couple of plays just because, like, my friends asked me to be in them, and I hadn't really trained as an actor, but they were like, "Hey, like, why?" And I liked it, and I kind of had a knack, and I was enjoying it. But then, dancing was my thing. Whatever, I had to quit I'm not gonna get into that. And then I went to film school, and after I finished film school, because I wanted to be a director, I finished film school, and my faculty was like, "No, you should really be an actor." And then, funnily enough, one of my ballet teachers way back when also told me that. So I don't know why it took me so long to kind of listen to them, but. Finally, after that, I was like, okay, you know what? Let me try. And I took a bunch of studio classes. I never actually went to theater school, which is a funny thing. I think that people who have gone to theater school, I'm generalizing, of course, I'm sure there's lots of lovely people out there that don't think this way. But I have found that breaking into theater, the theater world, not having a theater degree is challenging. So any theater that I've personally done, it's been very few. One show was a show that I wrote myself. And it's sad because I love to be on stage. It's actually where I am the most vibrant, I feel. Yeah. But I tend to do more film and TV. So when Greta asked me to do the show and then I read it, I was like, oh my God, thank you to all the gods and goddesses, because I never get these opportunities, number one. And number two, a role like this, I very seldom get an opportunity to even audition for something like this, even if it's on TV or something. So I don't know. I guess that answers your question, but that's like my history in a brief thing.
Because it sounds like you initially, when you made the transition from dancer to director, dancer to film director to actor, that you were thinking about film.
Yes, and I still do. Like, I do a lot of things. I'm an actor, obviously, but I write as well, and I do film. I do like dance on film stuff. I have a youth group. I also am writing my own web series. I've written like my own play, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm kind of like I use all of the tools that I have to make work, because that's what I want to do, and that's how I like to live my life. And I don't know what else I would do if I didn't do all of those things. And I think I think being a person that has a multitude of things that they do, we're not raised in this society or in the world really to do many things. I think it's changing now. I think younger people now, it's better to be that way. Yeah. But when I was younger, it wasn't. It was like, pick something. And then over the years of me trying really hard to pick something, I ended up picking a bunch of different things just one at a time. And then now here I am, and I'm like, oh, it all makes sense now. And I can use all of these things in conjunction, and it's so cool. It's really, really cool.
What's really interesting is that I went to theater school at a time long ago. I graduated in 1993, and at the time, nobody was talking about self-producing. Yeah. At the time, it was all about go to school, get the go to the audition, get the audition, talk to your agent, get the next audition. Like, it was just about like working for somebody else.
Oh yeah.
There was never any talk about self-producing. It was a footnote in our business of acting class that there was this thing called Fringe. Yeah. But I find that now. It's important.
Oh, yeah.
It's so important to be able to make a name for yourself and get seen that you have to do it.
Absolutely.
When we had auditions, and you realize just how much talent there is out there. And so, because the market is getting oversaturated, like even like teachers, they're saying they're graduating 9,000 teachers for 4,000 jobs or whatever the number was. And like the same thing is going on with acting, you know, like all these actors graduated. I mean, I certainly suffered from this when I graduated from acting. I felt entitled to have a job, to have work in this industry that you've trained for, and no one owes you anything, you know, so that's how you set yourself up, you know, to self-produce, put your name out there.
And become a multifaceted, multidisciplinary person, right?
It's actually, I think, so much easier now there are so many small theaters popping up, like the Red Sandcastle and the Storefront Theater, and these really independent theaters, so that it's now a little more affordable to produce a show than it was when you had to rent Theater Pax Marais or Factory or something like that. So it's a little easier.
That said, I still think it's pretty expensive. You know, like I don't know what the rents are, but I've heard various totals. But like the part of the problem, what's going on in Toronto now, is that people aren't really coming out to see the shows. Not in a big way. Like it's really like FUBU, like for by us, for like
for us, by us. No, it's true. But I think that's a Toronto thing. I think that's very much a Toronto thing. I think that it's,
I actually think that there's, you're right, that people aren't really going to see it. Fringe is its own thing. There's a little focus on that, but generally people are not going to see that independent theater, which is why some of the mid-sized and the independent theaters have to work so hard. But I sometimes think that there needs to be some way of, there needs to be an umbrella. Like, in a fringe tradition, there like I know Montreal, like all the fringe festivals that I've performed in, there's sort of like there is audience enough for everyone. And I think there's audience enough for everybody in most cities and in Toronto too. We just have to find a way to get the word out. Because you have your audience and I have my audience, and if we were to combine into one superpowered mega robot audience, we would be able to get more people out.
Absolutely.
But we hold on to our audiences consciously.
That's part of it. I mean, I think also, I don't know if this is what you want to talk about. I mean, get me talking about theater.
Let's see where the conversation goes.
But I mean, I feel the way the funding system works, it's also very much about segregating and not joining the audiences together. It's like, I would like to see the possibility of what Toronto could be on stage. And right now, that's not there. I mean, and at least a portion of it should be like, hey, you know, we do live in this multicultural, fascinating city, and yet I don't see it reflected on my audience in the theater. And
it doesn't make any sense. It's very strange.
It is very
very strange because, like you said, I mean, I grew up here, you know, and if I think about just even my circle of friends, you know what I mean? Like, we're from all over the place. And, you know, when I'm on the bus and I see, like, kids leaving school and they're, like, totally, you know, mishmash, whoever's from wherever. And that's the thing that's so beautiful about our city.
And we never see it on
and
stage.
It should be something that we use, you know, at least to our advantage.
So if I can speak to my theater history for a moment. So I'm from Toronto originally, but I lived in the States for most of my young adulthood, my teenage years and my young adulthood, and went to theater school. I did go to theater school. I'm one of those. But I still love you, Aj.
Oh, thanks.
But I went to theater school in the States, not here in Toronto, and then I moved back to Toronto, which people find this really strange, but by choice, because I could have stayed in the U.S., and opted not to for a whole variety of reasons, many of which have nothing to do with the theater, and most of which have everything to do with, you know, politics and the economy. But that's another podcast. So I came back to Toronto not knowing anybody, like not having a group of friends who I'd gone to theater school with, or who were creating, or who were doing anything in the city. And social media at that point wasn't where it is now. not even by a long shot. And it wasn't that long ago. I guess I've been back in Toronto for like 7 or 8 years.
Me too.
Yeah. So I got here and like very much wanted to create theater, and people kept and was going to auditions for things and things that I wasn't interested in, that I really didn't want to do. But I was going to auditions because that was what I was taught at theater school, was that you're supposed to go to auditions. And I didn't like any of it. And I remember I had a really brilliant like professor in theater school who, you know, we were having the conversation about like, what do you want to do with your life? Which usually makes me want to cry. And I said that I really wanted to do theater. Yeah. And he told me very brilliantly that it's really hard to make a living in theater, but you can make a life in theater. And so that was my takeaway that I brought to Toronto. And then I got here and I didn't know anybody, and it was very hard to find ways into that community. So I think like part of why we don't see the audiences, like we don't see the audiences that reflect the cultural diversity or the people in Toronto, because we don't see it on stage as well, because there's these segmented groups or stylized groups that are making theater, and it's everybody who's already friends with everybody else.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to our Fringe show a little bit, like the name, you know, you enter the Fringe lottery and you have to come up with a company name, which is also really stressful. And so like we went with Full Circle, because when I came back and I didn't know anybody and there were all these things going on, everybody was like, you have to create your own work, you have to create your own work. And I was like, what does that mean? Because I'm an actor, and like if in my personal philosophy of it, like theater is a team sport.
Absolutely.
You can't make it by yourself in a vacuum. You need other people, and I don't know anybody. So, like, what do you mean make your own work? And then I actually, because I was an early adopter of, like, Twitter and blogs and things like that, ended up being the stage manager for a Fringe show that Greta was in.
See, I don't know this story.
Which is how Greta and I met, and, like, the community sort of built out from there. But I think, like, that's, and I mean, here I am years later, sort of perpetuating the thing that drove me crazy, in that I'm making theater with friends, but I've made new friends, and hopefully it continues to expand outwards, because I think it does become a for us, by us, and who is us.
Well, and I think that what's interesting, because you just said, okay, you're making theater with friends, but then you also made new friends. Me, she's pointing at me. You can't see this right now. But yes, you made a new friend. And I've got a whole other circle. So it's like it grows exponentially, right? As you bring those new people together. You know what I mean? Because I felt the same way as you, because I was in New York, you know, also, and we came back like I think the same year, which is I didn't know until right now. It's so weird. But you know, I know what you mean. Like it's really hard to plug in when you're just like how do I get into this closed circle?
And I don't think that it's intentionally.
No, of course not. Like, absolutely.
I think it's amazing that those communities exist.
Sure.
Because like I love my theater school friends still, even when we're not in the same place. But it's how do you open that up to other people, whatever that means, right? Whether it's other people culturally, other people that you just don't know, like other people who didn't go to theater school, who have an interest, you know, all of these sort of, how do we bring everybody together? Because I think that's something that, like, fundamentally about theater that I appreciate.
I mean, I can put my finger on what the problem is.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, no, because I think it is. Because I think that it's just really hard to produce these things. Like, it's not on my, like, you're asking people to do a lot. And yes, like, in a ideal world, like, how wonderful to be able to invite new people all the time. But, like, right now, I'm coordinating schedules with, like, you know, 11 different actors and stage managers and all this stuff, and you need people that you know are solid there. And because it's like true. And I think that's one of the reasons why this situation has grown.
It certainly does. But you know, I also think, and I've fallen victim to this a lot, is that I've had plenty of opportunity to go see shows that have people I don't know in them, and I have not taken it. If I'm completely honest, I've let shows pass me by because I didn't know somebody in that cast. But what could I have learned if I went to that show?
We are all guilty. You know, it's a collective. I mean, this is like a microcosm of the entire world. Like, this is the problem. You know what I mean? Like, yes. But I will say, from my perspective, being like only knowing Greta really, you know, in this situation and saying and putting myself out there. But, you know, Greta cast me. I'm a brown woman. You know what I mean? I'm almost 40. There's not a hell of a lot out there, at this point in time for me. And so the fact that Greta didn't think about, Greta didn't have any kind of, like, blinders on in terms of, like, well, you know what I mean? Like, there wasn't, like, but... it wasn't like that. Like, you asked me because you were like, yeah, you could do, this is good for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This would be a good role for you. Like, you know what I mean? Purely because of that. And I think that, in terms of at the very least, when we talk about the multiculturalism of Toronto and engaging more actors and people like that, in that way, I think being able, and so beautiful because it's so rare in my experience, to interact with a person that is not at all thinking about that, who is not going... Like, it's not a factor, and I think that's the most important thing, at least for me, of course for me, but to change the way it looks. We can't think about it that way. We got to be like, this is a person.
Which is also what I love about the show that Greta wrote, is that it's number one, doesn't take that into consideration, but also, like, it's a story where there's 4 characters, and 3 of those characters happen to be women.
Yeah.
But it's not a play about us being women.
That's right.
No.
It's a play about a bunch of people, and 3 of us happen to be women.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which I think is something that we also don't get to see.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's very true. We don't see, if you look at what so many of the theaters are, and this is I see it on Twitter, it's conversations that I'm following all the time, people talking about not just diversity on stage, but more women playwrights and more women on the stages. And again, we don't see it enough. So it's great that we are seeing a play that's not that has a lot of women in it, but is also about people. It's like because women
are people.
Of course.
It's so simple, right? It's so ridiculous.
How often is it like, oh no, we can't.
It's a girl play. It's a girl play, or prefacing an artist with female artist, she's a woman director. Why does that happen? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like, no, can I just? I'm a director. Yes, I am also a woman. But you don't go, oh, this is the best male director.
No. It's true.
You say this is the best director. Oh, and she's a great female director. Like,
it's so interesting. Because definitely in the back of my mind, I have been writing on and off for years, and then obviously the Bechdel test and the idea of how do you create scenes that where women aren't just talking about a guy, and that is very important to me. I've always wanted to see the epic female stage fight. I never get to see that.
Yes.
I never get to see that, which is why, we can talk about it later, because I want to make my other point, which is, that was something that I was thinking about. And then when I know that it's not always in my power, but the kind of theater that I want to create is one that could be that potential utopia of Toronto. And I think what I like about these characters, and obviously it's not possible all the time, but I think it could be played by a wide age range. Doesn't matter what race you are, and so that was something that I'm really pleased with in the show. Back to the stage fight. I mean, just because this is one of the things. Like, why write a play? Do we need another play?
That is one of the questions.
Why do we do this thing? And why for me is that I'm going to get to see things that I have never seen on stage before that I've wanted to see. And so one of those things is a really big female stage fight that lasts for a really long time, and it's really good. And Louisa Zhu is an amazing fight choreographer. So there you go.
She taught me how to spit properly.
It was really entertaining to watch.
And then to see these scenes where it's not about, they're not two women talking about a man. They're not, and at the same time there is still a male character, and it's not. It's not.
We all seem to be on equal footing. That's what's so lovely about it. Everyone is on equal footing, and no one is defined by their relationship with, a member of the opposite sex, or even a member of the same sex,
or even their own relationship with their own sex. Like, it's not an issue. It's a non-issue. But I think it's really interesting that that's even a thing that we have to try to do, because not that you had to you specifically, but that we have something like the Bechdel test, right? Yeah. Where you're like, well, if we're just writing stories from life, I would say that probably 99% of my day I spend not talking about a guy. No, so why is it that we have to it's so crazy.
It's a challenging notion that women are people.
I know.
Let's think about the fact that if the Bechdel test was initially written or it was about movies.
Yes.
Movies are financed largely by old white dudes who want to see old other white dudes on stage or on film, and where their fantasy of women is somebody who supports the white dude.
Absolutely.
So it comes from
No, you're right. Absolutely, for sure.
But you are correct that you spend more of your day not talking about a guy than you do talking about a guy, and we should see that on the stage.
It's unbelievable, actually. It's actually that we have this conversation and be like, that's actually a thing. You know?
No, absolutely. That's it. But all that can be done at this point is that for more women to write, for more women to direct. I mean, everybody is having this conversation. I just hope that it leads to some action.
To work. Yes.
Because I was in Quebec and I went to a conference in Montreal, and it was, a panel of the grand dames of the Quebecois theater, and and they're saying the same thing, where are the young female directors? Where are the young female playwrights? I mean, they were talking about certain luminaries that they have right now. But it's the same shit everywhere.
Well, and it's exactly, I was just talking to a gentleman today, actually, before coming to rehearsal. In the park, I was walking my dog. But no, we had a really interesting conversation, because it's like, you can sit and you can talk about it and complain about it and be like, oh, I wish I had this job, or why can't I find a job like that, or why all these other, you can, and many people sit in that place, and I get it, I've been there, but at some point you have to go, okay, I need to take action. I need to do something about that. Whether that means you support a person, if you can't yourself maybe do it, maybe you can, how do I support this person I know, or how can I find a way to support something being made, or in any way that you can, or you make it yourself, or you write it, or you do whatever. And it goes the same with, females, and also with ethnic people, people who are from different backgrounds and who look different, whatever that means. You know what I mean? Not different, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Non-white, I suppose, is what I'm saying. But at this point, we should be working to level that playing field. I don't expect somebody to write my story. I don't. I had to get to that point where I went, I'm not auditioning for the things that the stories I want to see. Well, that's because I can't expect people who are not coming from my perspective to write that story.
You have to do it yourself.
You have to do you do.
You've got to tell your story.
That's it.
How can I sit here and wait for other people?
No, I started with Aisha's
story. We
went way
way off.
I mean, we're talking about some really great stuff, but I want to make sure that everybody gets time to talk about their story. And we will. I'm sure we'll go off track when we get to talk about
Because, we're good at that.
No, everybody's good at that, and I love it. I love it. Brittany, we heard a little bit about your story, so I wanted to go a little bit more into that. So you talked about being in the U.S. For theater school. Can we go a little bit before that and talk a little bit about why theater?
Okay.
And also what took you to the U.S.
We'll start with the second one.
Okay.
I ended up in the U.S. when I was 9 because of my parents and my mom's job, and they decided to move to the U.S. Essentially because she's a doctor, and it turns out that private healthcare you make more money. So that is how I ended up in the U.S. And I think that my participation in theater was perhaps sort of a reaction to that. I was always that kid in class who was loud and had a lot of personality, and I've always been opinionated, and I've always been outspoken, so I feel like there were people who saw this as an opportunity to like channel that and control it a little bit. And literally, I actually think that I was Mother Goose of all things in a play in like grade 4 that I swear I ended up in that role because I was louder than everybody else, and so I could make myself heard. So that was sort of how it started, and I also, took dance as a kid, so I was comfortable being on stage and comfortable being in front of people, and then it sort of exploded from there. I fortunately landed in, I didn't feel this way at the time, but fortunately landed in a place in Michigan that was a smaller community, which I wasn't thrilled about, but a smaller community that had a lot of investment in amateur theater. We had a really strong community theater tradition and a really strong tradition of including young people in that, and having shows directed by young people for young people, all of those kinds of things, as well as all of our sort of schools had fairly strong theater programs. So that's how I kind of got sucked in and then fell in love with it, I guess.
Was it by sort of being like thrust into theater that you started to fall in love with it, or was it?
I think it was
before then.
I was drawn to it before that, and in that I really through dance, I guess, and that I really loved. I loved to be on stage, and I loved expressing myself. But also, I used to go when we did still live in Toronto. We went to the opera and to the ballet, and I don't actually think I ever saw a straight play until I was considerably older. But I was always fascinated by sort of watching that and watching these sort of worlds be developed and then told. And I guess I really like the storytelling aspect of it. Like, that's certainly something even now that still draws me to theater is the storytelling part of it. So yeah, I feel like I was thrust into it, but I was open to the discovery of it.
When did you know it was something that you wanted to do, for your career?
I feel like it was around that sort of grade 8, 9 kind of moment when everyone's like, pick something.
Oh,
have to do something. Which is terrible.
So stupid. So young.
Idiotic. And in hindsight, because I also, I'm in theater now, but I very much have a day job, and my life has taken many different directions. But it was sort of that moment of pick something, and it was sort of the only thing that without sounding like a jerk, I was good at lots of things, but I didn't like doing a lot of them. And so just being good at something wasn't enough. I really loved doing it. And so that was sort of my moment of I couldn't imagine doing something else. So I was like, okay, well, I guess this is a thing. And I was fortunate to have a really strong group of friends who were also all a lot older than me, who had made similar choices. And so I had a lot of really good... I was not pointing at you, but if the shoe fits... I saw it. I said they were great role models, all right? No, I was fortunate to watch a lot of people go before me and to feel like it was a possibility, and then to sort of carry that forward.
You mentioned being somebody who does theater and who also has a day job. As somebody in that position, I'm wondering, because when I got a day job, I had given up the theater. I was like, that's it, fuck it, I'm done. And so that was my impetus for getting that office type job. Of course, that didn't hold.
It never does.
But there was, for a while, a bit of guilt about selling out, quote unquote.
For sure.
Did you find the same thing when you got the office job?
I think I had very much the same experience. It sort of started out as I don't love auditioning, and I don't love auditioning for things that I don't really want to do. And I'm auditioning for things I don't really want to do. I'm not necessarily getting stuff, and I don't have any money. So now I just have a huge anxiety attack. So that sort of led me back to some of the other things that I was good at doing, and became, a pathway to having a career. And then it was a little bit, especially because I went to theater school and had this concept of you graduate, you go audition, you get a job, you do this thing. Had a lot of, and I went to a theater school that, I'll be paying for my theater school experience for a really long time. So I did feel kind of guilty about, not so much about selling out, but about not making use of my education.
Were
and
they
my
not
background.
talking about self-producing when you were in school?
They were not.
Okay.
I think, and some of this may be like the way that the program was structured. Like some of the people who I went to school with certainly had that bug, but I feel like everything that I kind of did was really pushing the like, you go, you audition, et cetera, et cetera. I think kids who were doing, we had a whole bunch of different tracks, so kids who were doing more like what was air quote considered experimental theater probably had a lot more exposure to the concept of producing, or some of the groups that were looking at, you know, aspects of theater beyond acting probably got a lot more of that, whereas those of us who I think were more focused on acting, like that's the pathway. You go, you audition, whatever. Absolutely. Which is unfortunate and like totally to the detriment of other possibilities.
Yeah. I sort of followed the same path as you because I got the office job, but when I came back to the theater, I wasn't interested in auditioning. I just wanted to make my own stuff.
No, and that's totally where I find myself now. Partly because there is a small part of me that also likes my office job because it was important to me to do something. If I was going to have a day job, to do something that I didn't hate.
Yes.
Yes.
And ideally something that had to do with the arts in some capacity.
You're very fortunate.
Yeah, I know, totally.
Most of us, I don't hate my job, but it's not in the arts. And that sort of sometimes pains me. But
well, and I sometimes think to myself, like, maybe I should let go of the arts and make more money.
Well, there is that.
But I hold on to it because, I always like the idea of doing something that I believe in. And if another opportunity that I believed in came up, I might go in that direction as well. But I seem firmly rooted in the not-for-profit world.
Greta,
noble.
What was your why theater?
Why? Okay, listen. I have a diary from when I was 6 years old where I'm like, I'm going to be an actress. Over dramatic, I'm going to climb the ladder. I couldn't believe it. I found it and I was like laughing. And my mother, she's like, I'm half Norwegian, half Greek, and my mother's always like, "Oh, it's the Greek side of you. Here's the tragedy." So I always knew, and I was always I grew up in Toronto, and I participated young people's theater, the Tarragon spring training. I did all this stuff, and then I went to university and studied theater studies because I really wanted to go to Montreal. I thought that was the bee's knees, and there I met a woman who became my mentor, and Jacqueline McClintock, and I'd study Meisner technique with her, and I was kind of entered into this world where all these professional actors, and they were handsome and gorgeous and amazing, and I was 18 and didn't know I was in heaven, right? So, and McGill, even though it doesn't have a conservatory program, has a really great extracurricular theater thing. So I directed shows. I was in tons of shows. They would bring in professional artists. Actually, last week or 2 weeks ago, I met up with a director, Bride McDonald, who gave me notes on my play and really set me up for it's all of those people who are in the extracurricular world. Not all of them, but a lot of them now have kind of careers in theater or some aspect of the arts. So, and then, anyway, I know you didn't want to ask about my school. Anyway, I went to New York, and then, it's kind of hard, but, but I went to New York, and I studied at the Neighbor Playhouse with Meisner technique, and came back, and I actually started self-producing. I was doing, film and television, but then I kind of, went back and forth. I don't know, I ended up here.
I'm curious about the 6-year-old girl writing in her diary
I know.
That she wants to be an actor.
Yeah.
How did that 6-year-old girl even have the concept of being an actor?
I know, it's kind of funny. My mother is definitely into the arts. I went to plays. I did that. I know that the first production that I ever went to go and see, aside from, I guess, some kid shows, it was Much Ado About Nothing.
Oh, Where did you see it?
In Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Weirdly, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty young. I don't remember. But yeah, so it's it's always been there. But it's really interesting to hear about the struggle of just like, I don't know, getting by. Like, I feel like somewhere along the way, I lost a few years just trying to make money.
For
sure.
Like,
I
think everywhere.
And
you have to find, how, like, and in this business, when you were taught that your career is going to be audition, perform, audition, perform, or work as a waiter in between.
Yes.
And
and I'm a terrible waiter. I'm a
I knew that I could never be a waiter.
I only I was one for 2 weeks, and thankfully, I was terrible. I was terrible for so many reasons, but I had to do 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. shift so that I could rehearse this play that I was self-producing with my friend. And so I did that for about 2 weeks, and I couldn't remember anything. And then I actually auditioned for the part of a waitress, got that, and that was enough to pay my rent for a month. Whatever I needed.
Yeah, you can actually not have to really be.
I know, that's it. So I was like, this is perfect, but it didn't continue after that. So then I was back to being broke. Yeah.
But I think it's always that cycle as artists of, unless you get that job, unless there's a job, because I feel like if I was going to get a job, it would have to be, I would have to love it in some way. I couldn't, but I think it's been a process of trying to manage different streams of income. You know what I mean? It's like I make income from so many different places. And it's really about juggling those balls and kind of understanding how to get your cash flow right, because I always feel like it's a cash flow issue. It's not necessarily a making money issue. It's more that, okay, I did this job and I'm not going to get paid for a month. And then and being able to navigate that and understand how that ebb and flow works. With your many different streams of income. I feel like that's every most people in the arts, that's kind of
that's the big thing.
What you got to figure out.
And I feel like the flip challenge to having a day job, and especially if it's a day job that you do happen to like or enjoy in some respects, is sometimes then remembering that it's supposed to be a day job.
Yes.
Right.
And not letting it own
your life.
Whole life.
I went through a period of time where my job started to take over. And it was like, they want to promote you. They want to promote you. And you're like, I could be making so much more money. But then
you're not gonna.
I don't have this anymore.
And for me, it was sort of I couldn't find ways to be creative because I was worried about money all the time, which is why I got the day job. But then I was worried about the day job, so I wasn't being creative. And so that was a good sign to me that I needed a different day job. And then it's sort of it's very much about striking that balance.
Absolutely.
And continuing to remind yourself to strike that balance, because it doesn't, that's the ebb and flow, I think, of the day job world. Is keeping both of those things in check.
And also, keeping at it till you find what that is. You've had a different job, and then you found you found another job, but being able to be open to that as well,
And I also think one of the challenges is you can't be in the arts and not care about it. And so and I think that also transfers. So I find I have a hard time doing anything without caring about it. And as soon as I sort of throw that behind it, it's very easy for it to become sort of engrossing.
It's funny how, as people in the arts, we taught ourselves that to do something, we have to love it. That's why we're in the arts. And so we sort of take that into other things. That we
true. No, it's so true. I know. I have a friend who is an accountant. And, what's interesting is that he doesn't ask that his job provides him anything more than just, paying the bills and allowing him to do what he wants with the rest of his life, right? And yet somehow in the arts we demand that
it's so true. I never thought of it that way. That is so True.
Yeah, like who says?
Most people, they're doing a job so that they can then go and have a great time, or they're going to then go and have a vacation. When was the last time I had a fucking vacation? You know?
It's funny though, because I actually think there's a lot of people who feel the same way that might not be in the arts.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, my girlfriend is a career coach, and she talks to people all the time who hate their jobs.
Right.
And teaches them how to find the job they want to do.
Right.
You know, it's not uncommon, but I think that in the arts we do it more than others.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not a question of hating. It's just not asking that you love it,
that your job gives you that.
Like even like you were saying earlier,
that your job fulfill you.
Right.
That can't be the thing in your life that fulfills you. And I think like something that I struggled with when I went to theater school was, you know, in high school, theater was what I did that I loved, and like that was my, you know, hobby for better or worse. And then I got to theater school and all of a sudden it was my job.
Yeah.
And then how do I find something?
Oh,
how do I find another outlet so that I can remain, you know, a relatively sane
Did you
person.
find that in theater school?
Because
I didn't.
I don't know that I found it in theater school. Like I think it took me. I think it took me. It took me considerably longer, but I had some awareness about it in theater school. That I was like, I need something else.
Oh my God,
so that I don't lose my mind. Oh my gosh, this is really funny because, you know, you think these things, you don't know that other people are thinking the same thing. I'm just having one of those moments.
This is one of the advantages of doing this podcast. And
you're like, oh, yay, okay. Exactly. It's very,
great for
it's very, very nice. But it's interesting because I always said this about dancing because people are like, oh, you know, why didn't I go further? I was a professional dancer, but my body was shot, so I actually couldn't. But along with that, I also knew at a fairly young age, I mean, dancing is a young profession, but probably around 20, 21, I had my own dance company. But I knew that my brain wasn't the same as the dancers I knew who were incredibly amazing and successful and could go and audition and and do all and be really good at it. And it's not just about, and I think the same goes with acting. It's not just about your talent, your ability, like all those things. You have to have a certain mindset. And I understood from a relatively young age that my brain didn't operate in the same way. Like I didn't want to think about dance all the time. I didn't want to live it, breathe it 24 hours a day. I didn't. I wanted to go and do it and then talk about something else and like do something else. And the dancers I knew when I was training weren't like that. And I was like, oh, I need something else. Like it was this moment of like, I can't just be this one person.
Another gem from theater. I had like so many great pull quotes. I should like
write them down.
Be a publicist for NYU. Another like great piece of wisdom was like when you're making a decision, and this came in like the business of acting moment here was like always err on the side of your life.
Yeah. No, it's
good advice.
That's really good advice.
That is good advice.
We should all probably take more often.
And like, which easier said than done.
Sure.
But it's the kind of thing where like, it's also like those life experiences and that part of your brain that doesn't want to think about dance all the time. Those are what make you an interesting artist.
Yes. Yeah.
I know. Well, it's life, right? Because I the amount of times friends of mine, like close friends of mine, you know, you get those looks from them sometimes over the years, over like 20 years of me fumbling around, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, like fumbling around, being poor, being like all these things from my siblings, from whoever. And then you go, wait a minute. All of it made me way better. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? You go, I know for a fact that I'm a way better actor because of the 20 years I spent fumbling around in the dark and being depressed and doing all the whatever I had to do. That makes me good at what I do.
Yeah.
And people, I teach young people, and I'm always kind of trying to tell them these things. We don't get told those things. No one tells us that truth. You know what I mean? That actually your life is going to make you better. So that piece of advice you got is
experience.
I mean, yes.
So that you can have no regrets as a human.
That's right.
Absolutely. Because you don't know where it's going to take you. And probably it's going to take you to a better and more interesting place.
Absolutely.
But that's a really hard thing to put into words.
But if it's just there, like the fact that you just had that, I think that's so beautiful. Because even though when you're young and you get told these beautiful things, pearls of wisdom, you don't always, right away, obviously, okay, great, and now I got it. Yeah. But if it's at the very least marinating there somewhere, then as you travel on your journey, you kind of remember it. You go, oh, right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so great.
It's the things that stick with you.
Yeah.
Moments.
Yeah.
So not to freak you guys out, but I mean, we're in June.
I'm like, what?
It's very much June.
Which means that the Toronto Fringe Festival is...
Don't give us a count.
I'm not going to give you a count. It's not that far off.
No.
True.
So, can you guys name like one of the what was a challenge that you faced in putting this show together, aside from writing it, which I know is a challenge it's a challenge writing things. Putting this show together, can you guys name something that was your biggest challenge that you're happy you got through? And
this is not probably what you're looking for, but I will say that at this point right now, I feel publicity and getting the word out there is the biggest challenge for me, because I feel very confident in my actors. I'm living out my own dream, seeing this show. Like, I know that I'm going to be sitting in the audience laughing and enjoying myself. So, there we go, But I would like people to come to the show. And we haven't hired a publicist. So, that's my biggest challenge. I mean, I feel so lucky that people they come out of the woodwork to help you, to do things.
Well, Greta is also really good at building community.
Oh, am I? Oh,
you are. No, I would say Greta, when she started teaching acting, taught acting in her living room, which is where we're sitting right now, and also did a playwriting group in her living room that performed.
Yeah, this is
and got people out to things. So Greta has this magical ability about her, in my mind anyway.
Magical. I don't know
and to get people to show up to them. So I'm kind of.
Well, I hope.
Do you have a publicity plan? In front of you? Do you have what is your plan?
Well, Aisha and I were talking about going around and splitting up, putting out posters.
Yes, that was one thing.
We've sent a few emails. I started a Twitter account, which was good. I mean, Mooney on Theater said they'd come, and Intermission Mag liked some of my tweets, and so.
And what about? Have you just sent out your press release? Obviously, you've got all that stuff going. And I've done some fringe festivals myself, from Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, and I cannot stress word of mouth and talking to people.
Yeah.
If I didn't talk to people in a line, they were not coming.
Yeah, in the lineup. Okay, I can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can do that.
Do you know Jen Rolls?
No.
You heard of Jen Rolls?
I have, yes.
Watch him.
Yeah.
Because he will not stop.
Oh, really?
He will walk from venue to venue and talk to his.
I can do that. I can do that.
You can do that.
You can.
We'll do it all together.
Yeah, I can
and
do that.
that's better.
Yeah.
I think I can do that.
I know you can do that. I know you can do that.
I feel like all of these.
I think I should be Juice and do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I should be like, you need to come to the show.
Yeah.
It's such a great show.
Toronto Fringe lineup should be prepared to see the three of us.
That's a really good idea.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you.
Because I think we're all just like, well, I don't know. I'm on your team over here, Greta.
Yeah.
I also feel very, how do we, it feels like this big foggy ball of stuff I don't know how to navigate. You know?
See, I think for me, it's been the whole process up to this point, and whatever piece of it we're on in the moment seems like the most daunting part of it, and then we check it off, and we move on to the next thing.
One.
Yeah.
So, and I likewise have faith in the team, so I feel like it's all going to happen. But I think I will say, just because writing the show and all of that, and just getting ourselves sort of organized, all of that pre-production work that we're now able to fall back on a little bit now that we've started rehearsing in depth. All of that was a lot to make it through.
Yeah.
What venue are you guys in at the Toronto
Theater
Fringe?
Pass Morai.
In the main
space.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
There it is. And what's your opening day?
June 30th.
Oh,
What?
no, it's a good day.
I thought you were going to say I can't go. That's what I was feeling. I'm
What
counting
time?
on you, Phil. 8:15.
8:15? Yeah. 8:15 tonight?
Yeah.
That's a great slot.
It is a good slot.
That is a
Right.
great slot.
That is a great
an
slot.
opening night.
I want to remind everybody that like the next day is a stat holiday, so like you can sleep in if you're perhaps overserved at the beer tent.
Totally.
afterwards.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
That's very important.
And
Yeah.
do you mind if I just plug the other show?
plug the other
Because
Please, we didn't even get a chance to talk about the other
it's
show.
okay, but just so you know, this fascinating exploration of World War I and Dadaism is happening at 10 p.m. at Pass Morai Main Space, just one show after another. So I'll be directing my first full-length shows, and they are premiering one after the other.
I know.
It's called Goodbye to All That. It's
it's
pretty
fantastic
zany.
as well.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
nerve-wracking at all to have both of us.
Yeah, no, I know it's not. It's not at all. I asked my mother if she would watch both shows, and she said, "Well, I sat through Wagner, and so 8 hours of that, I can sit through anything." I don't really.
That is
I'm not.
I think your only option is to take that as some kind of compliment.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's it.
That's what you really
That's it. That's
Absolutely.
it. So
That's amazing.
We'll see. We'll see how
It's
it
gonna
goes.
be June 30th is going to be a great
That's a
day.
big
Yeah.
day.
It
It's a
is.
big
I'm
day.
excited.
It's a big day.
I'm excited to see that show.
Yeah.
I'm excited to finish our show
Yeah.
and get my ass in the seat.
Yeah.
That is good. That's
I'm
very
excited.
rare to be able to finish a show and go straight into
How
it.
exciting is that?
Yeah.
And then it's a stat holiday the next day.
Yeah.
So,
So you get the beer
after the
and-
two
Yeah.
shows,
Oh
we can
my
be like,
God, just
You will
Yeah.
have earned it.
yes, I'm excited
holy,
for that.
holy bejeebers.
I've got the easiest job in this whole crew over here.
Why is
Definitely.
that? How do you say?
Because I just have to come and and act and leave.
Yeah. I was like, why is this?
Yeah.
Well, that's all. Other than some promotion, I get that.
Yeah.
But like in terms of, honestly, you guys are both. You have a lot of hats there. I have a very few hats that I'm wearing. That's all I'm saying.
But you wear them very well.
Oh, thanks.
Well, this is great, you guys. I'm sorry, but we're basically out of time. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.